I happen to be head of the School of Architecture, Landscape Architecture and Urban Design. And as you can imagine, a school with that name has a focus on the design of the built environment. So we look at things from designing in terms of architecture, landscape architecture and urban design. We have lots of students. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, no problems. We have lots of students in the undergraduate area who study our 3-year degree. We have many postgraduate students who are doing coursework masters. Now the coursework masters are what you have to do to get to the professional level of practice. So our 3-year undergraduate degree is a generic degree that introduces you to the various areas. But if you want to go out and practice as an architect, as an urban designer or landscape architect, you have to do the 2-year masters on top of that. Our staff, and I think you need to be aware, our staff in the recent Excellent Research Australia ERA ranking was ranked as world standard, world class in terms of research. I think the important thing about that is not to big note ourselves, but rather to let you as students and you as parents know that what we do in terms of research gets fed back into the actual teaching, so that the students who are in our classes are up to date with what's happening around the world. The other really important thing about our staffing is that we recognise that we as academics, as good as we think we are, the reality is that we're not always in touch with industry. So we have at least 80 industry sessional people that come in and teach. So they ground our program in reality. Our staff itself, if you're looking at that, there's the list of the professional staff, not the permanent staff on campus. We come from 9 different countries. The reason for that, or not the reason, but the advantage of that for you is that in actual fact, it guarantees you an international perspective. A lot of us have not only worked and lived overseas, we actually bring that culture, that way of practice here so that our students can gain that a different appreciation. Because we don't just live, we live in Australia, but Australia now competes with the world. So we have to understand how the rest of the world figures, how the rest of the world thinks, how the rest of the world practices our profession. Our program, as I said, the Bachelor of Design Studies is a 3-year undergraduate program, but that leads to the postgraduate professional level masters. As I said, they are what you have to do to practice at the professional level. They're 2 years duration, and they are Masters of Architecture, Master of Landscape Architecture. We also have double degrees that are 3-year duration in the fields of Master of Architecture and Landscape Architecture and Master of Planning Urban Design. So as you can see, the 3-year degree gives you pathways into more than one area. It's not just into architecture, it gives you pathways into landscape architecture, pathways into urban design and urban and regional planning. It's the only degree in the state that actually enables you to do that. To go through this in more detail, there's our 3-year degree, years 1, 2, 3. How do you get into it? Obviously, we're reliant on the ATAR test, on the ATAR results. So it's the score you get from your high school results. We also have entry via STAT test. STAT means adult entry test, where effectively the test that's given to you is done by normally SATAC. The test that they administer is the equivalent of an IQ type test, and what it does is actually sees whether you're capable of doing the work. And I think it's important to understand that, because there's no point setting you up into a program that you may not be able to do, because that would set you up to fail, and that wouldn't be good for you or for us. You could also get in if you come through TAFE. Depends on how well you've done in the TAFE sector, so the options, the different ways of getting into the program are there for you. If you just decide at the end of the 3-year degree that's all you want to do, you want to go out and work, you can do that, but you're working at the paraprofessional level. That is, you'll be working in an architect's office where you will be assisting with doing the work, or a landscape architect's office where you'll be primarily working as an assistant. Most of our students don't stop there, they keep going. They go on and do the master's programs. The masters are essential if you want to practice at the full professional level. So that getting into those isn't automatic. We require you to achieve a certain standard in your undergraduate degree. To get into the single master, you have to achieve a 60% average in your undergraduate degree. Now 60% sounds high or sounds low, but it's only the equivalent of a good pass. It's a P1 equivalent. And we get about 99% of our students achieve that. So I don't think it's an issue. You shouldn't let that be something that dissuades you from doing the program. Same time, those who do a bit better and want to go on and do a double masters, so have the ability to work in more than one area, we ask them to do a little bit better, so the average is 70%, which is the equivalent of a credit. And a significant number of our students actually achieve that. So really, it's entirely up to you as to how hard you work, what results and rewards you get. And this last bit shows how the double masters, you graduate with single masters. If you do the third year, you go out with 2 master's degrees. These master's degrees actually, because there's more than one, they give you the facility to be employed in more than one area. And it's a great strength of our program. So the 3-year degree leads to a 2-year master's or 3-year double masters. But you can work in more than one field. But I think the message that I need to get across to you is that if you want to work at the professional level, and I suspect most of you do, then the minimum is a 5-year commitment. It's not a simple 3-year commitment. That's okay to get you going, but you need to commit yourself beyond that to work at the professional level. In terms of careers, our graduates work in multidisciplinary teams. They are part of the built environment discipline area, and they work with many cognate people who share that field. So they work with engineers, the many different types of engineers. They work with construction personnel and so on. And you'll see there the top 4 there are the traditional careers that our graduates get involved with, but because our graduates are so broad, they can work in other fields as well. And what sets our graduates apart from the others is this concept of design thinking. If you do a design type degree, you're actually learning how to solve problems because we are all project based. You're given a project almost from day one and told, solve this issue, design a house. We have a little competition here for, it's not going to be done in this class, but for those of you who are under 10, and I suspect not too many in this room, who want to design a house for a mouse, you start to think, how would you go about that? Suddenly you have to start thinking in a different way. You have to start solving problems. So this design thinking is a very, very important aspect of our degree. And a good example that I can give there is that it opens doors in other career areas, areas that you may not have thought of. A good example that I can comment about is 3 years ago I was in Sydney at a major conference dealing with construction. So all the major construction companies in Australia were there. Some of those were multinationals like Multiplex. They were asked, who do you prefer to employ at different levels? And we had thought that because they are predominantly construction companies, that they would choose engineers and construction personnel for most of their fields. In actual fact, they chose those people for the technical areas, but for leadership and innovation and for the high order areas in terms of within the organisation, they were choosing architects. When I asked why, it was simply because they know how to solve problems, they know how to be creative, and they can get us through problems that others cannot do. And it all stems from this concept of design thinking. Employment rate, now if you read the paper or listen to the radio, you'd think this state was about to collapse. Well, it isn't true. We are here, we're all alive, and we all got out of bed this morning. The employment rate for our graduates is over 80%. Now that figure doesn't mean that 20% are sitting home doing nothing or on the beach loafing. What it means is that's the figure that was discovered when after 3 months after graduation, the student said, yes, I'm in full-time employment. Now, in my case, I never filled a form out. I was overseas for the first 6 months after graduation. Last thing I wanted to do was work. So the truer figure is around the 90% mark. And what I'm really saying is there are jobs in the industry. You just have to be persistent. In terms of starting salaries, always something that interests potential students. If you stop at the end of the 3-year degree and you're working as an assistant, your starting salary, it's not your final, it's how you start, is in the order of $35,000. If you go and do the professional master's degrees, then you start at $45,000 to $50,000. And as with everything, the longer you stay in the game, the more money you will get as you progress through the organisation. Very important slide to show you here. This one, the purple slide here, is residential building. This black is engineering and infrastructure. And this line down the bottom is non-residential building, which is the big end of town, the multi-storey buildings, if you like. Now, if you listen to all the news, this state and this country has collapsed. In reality, it has not. In this industry, which is a major player of the entire country, you can see that it's not actually decreasing, it's actually projected to increase. It's not projected to increase greatly, but it is increasing. That means jobs will be there. Let me also say that these projections do not take into account any mining boom that this state may have. So if Olympic Dam comes on stream in the next 5 or 6 years, you can expect these figures to turn sharply upwards. What I'm trying to say is that there are jobs out there for you if you're prepared to look for them. The 3-year Bachelor of Design Studies is, as I said, a foundation degree. It was redesigned from the beginning of this year. We've started a brand new degree. I think it would be fair to say that the degree that this replaced was a bit old and needed replacement. If you look at this degree carefully, see this blue column here? That is all dealing with design. Half of the total degree deals with design and exploration. But it doesn't just deal with architectural design, it also talks about landscape architecture design and urban design. So what you're doing is, as you're progressing through the program, you're experiencing these different areas of, if you like, practice. So when you get to the end of 3rd year and you have to choose what do you do in 4th year, once you go into the master's program, you make an informed decision. The other half of the equation is the tools that you need to actually enable you to explore properly. So they're the more technical areas like building construction, reproduction in terms of how we represent, how we communicate, sustainability and so on. And if you look at architecture as a profession, it really is the fusion of art with science. So if you like, the left-hand side is the art where you explore, the right-hand side is the science where we actually get the tools to go and enable us to do that job. In terms of entry scores, last year's entry score for this generic degree was 65.85, 66 if you like. This year we expect it to be higher, and the reason we expect it to be higher is that people are just now discovering A, it's a brand new degree, B, it leads to these different career pathways. So from that aspect, we think it will be in high demand. A word just for mums and dads and also for the potential students here. Don't be frightened by the ATAR and what it means in terms of score. Sometimes you see a very, very high score or a very low. If something is high, it does not mean that it is hard necessarily. Or if something is hard, it doesn't mean that it is easy. It is simply a function of demand. And I won't name them obviously, but I know very high ATAR score programs that really aren't that hard, and similarly those that are very low that are actually quite complex. But it's a factor of how many people want to do it at the time. So what I'm saying is aim for what you want to do. Don't look at the ATAR scores when you make a choice. In terms of opportunities, something we take very seriously in this university and certainly in our school is internationalisation. We have arrangements with universities around the world to enable our graduates, if they wish, to go overseas and study 12 weeks, which is a semester. We can match the subject areas, and we generally can. It means you spend 6 months overseas studying, and that semester actually counts towards your degree here. But what a wonderful experience you've had. Conversely, we have people from overseas studying here. So we gain from them as well. But the overall, everybody wins because we are in an international community. The other aspect of internationalisation is overseas studios that are actually organised by my school. So some of my staff take students overseas to run design studios in different countries. Last year, they went to Malaysia and Singapore. These figures on the right show the students in Singapore. And down the bottom was a site visit where our graduates living in those countries were actually showing them around construction sites. These figures on the left, the reason once again they were in Malaysia, but why they were there, why they are here is that both of those buildings were designed by Hijaz Kasturi, who was a former student of this university. So our people who live this place, go work overseas, can be very, very successful, and many have been. We take industry recognition very, very seriously. If we don't do that, that means you guys can't practice, you don't have a job, then we have a problem. But it's not just here in Australia, it's also around the world. So our degrees are recognised and they're valued around the world. And to ensure that that occurs, we go work through with industry bodies to make sure that we're teaching what the industry needs. But we're also not just doing what the industry tells us to do, we're also including a lot of research so that we're up to date, in fact, pushing the boundaries all the time. But what that means is that you graduate with this degree, or one of our professional degrees, you can work overseas, if that's what you want to do. And sometimes I think going away for 2 or 3 years, then coming back is a wonderful experience to have. We also believe in experiential learning. We learn by doing. So we take our students out on site visits to see the results of their decision, to see how buildings are actually put together. So that if they wanted to do it this way, they suddenly realise maybe I can't because. Very, very valuable tool. Our facilities have improved significantly as of the beginning of this year. If those of you who don't know, the Hub Central is that building, about 100 metres in that direction. It's the back of the library. Well, it's the front of the library, I'm not quite sure what it is, this end of the library. It's a brand new facility, and it's changed the way that it reflects really the way that students learn today. So for the mums and dads here who studied probably around the time that I did, where you sat in the library, you weren't allowed to talk, you certainly couldn't eat, you weren't allowed to drink, you couldn't you couldn't have a mate there. Everything has now changed. If you go into the Hub, it's a very large space, computers, facilities, computers themselves, you bring your laptops in, space to plug them in. We have cafes all around the perimeter of the building. So students sit down at tables with their friends, with their laptops, with their drinks, with their lunch, their food, and they're eating and they're studying. And they'll stay there most of the day. It's quite different to the way the older people here and I learned. But it is the way that education is going, and we have to recognise that and make provision for it. Now my school is on access through that. I call it my front door because you get to my school, which is in the northeastern corner, you get to it going through the Hub. And I invite you to walk through the Hub just to see how exciting a space it is. We have excellent computer facilities. That's just one of our computer suites. Our final years have just got their own studio with excellent facilities as well, so they're all up to date. Very, very briefly, talk a little bit about the future. You've probably heard of the concept of BIM, or Building Information Modelling. This picture here is of the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain, designed by an architect called Frank Gehry from the US. When he conceived of this building, and as you can appreciate, if you look at how complex it is in terms of all the different forms, all the different curves, he could conceive it and he could sketch it, but he couldn't draw it. And to construct a building, you have to do drawings eventually in 2 dimensions. So they didn't quite know what to do. So what he did, he actually did a model, he digitised it, and then from that digitised model, they were able to investigate that, interrogate that, and eventually produce drawings that could be used for construction. What also happened is that they took advantage of that technology to actually get different components of the building manufactured in different countries around the world. They each had a barcode, they were shipped back to Spain, they put them together and the building actually fitted well. So it was, if you like, a modern version of industrialised building where components are made all around the world and put together there. And the BIM type technology is what enabled that to happen. Now that was one of the early ones. That is continuing. That is with the state of the art now. Most architectural practices around the world are using that technology. But as with everything, we don't stand still. The profession is moving on. We're now talking about the next generation, which is generative design. And what that means is using the computer, to actually look at that model, look at the way that building is designed, and putting it through many, many thousands of different permutations. So that way you can get different solutions, different options for you to look at. So some people think that doing that system, we're actually using the computer to design the building for us. I don't think we really are, because it depends on exactly what criterion we actually put into the computer to actually determine what is good and what is bad. So this computer here is still better than that computer there. Okay? But it does make the task a lot easier. So what that means, because our people, our architects, our landscape architects, our planners, our urban designers, they're right in the middle of this. They're actually running that part of the industry. It means it is inevitable that they will run and lead the design and procurement teams of the future. It just has to be, because otherwise the system just falls apart. Some examples. the South Australian Health Medical Research Institute down the road at City West. I'm sure you've all driven by that building, wondered what it is. That was designed using this technology. The Royal Adelaide Hospital, the new Royal Adelaide Hospital, which is currently being designed, is also using this technology. A little bit about our student work and some of our exhibitions. Our students produce work, and I like to exhibit that. We make that available to the public. Now, to get information about when that is available, please look at our school website. You can go to the university webpage, will lead you to that. We have a Facebook site as well, and that will advertise when that is occurring. In concert with that, we have a noted speaker series. So we take noted people in the professions, practicing in this country, or sometimes visiting from overseas, and they'll come and give us talks about their work. The next three are here. They happen on Tuesday nights at 6. And the next three occur on the 21st of August, that's next week, the 11th of September and the 16th of October. They all take place in the Horace Lamb Theatre. And for more details, refer to our school website because we advertise those there as well. What I'm suggesting is perhaps those of you who are looking seriously at these professions, come along, see what the students actually do, look at their work, and also come along and hear what these very successful practitioners have ended up doing. So you see from one extreme to the other, how you get from point A to point B. Now, the school has a website. It's also on Facebook. And I'll leave this slide up for a while so you can copy that information down. But the most important person here is probably down here. Clement Lowe, who's on my left. He's our student advisor. This is his email address, and I urge you to copy that down. clement.lowe@adelaide.edu.au. His phone number, and I'll read that because some of you at the back may not be able to see it clearly, 8313 5877. Clement is the student advisor, and he knows the answers to just about every question you can throw at him. I also want to give you a commitment. I'm available to speak with any of you at any time. Just ring through or make an appointment, and I'm happy to spend time with you, either as potential students or as mums and dads. I've had 4 of my own kids go through this process. I know how important it is to select and select wisely, and the most important thing about selection is to do it in an informed manner. So I give you my undertaking. I certainly will do it, and my staff will also meet with you. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions if you have any. Of course, you will have hundreds of them. Yeah, I run a very funny ship here. If you don't ask questions, I will ask you, and then I'll point, and it's very embarrassing. And I'll say, what did I say 12 minutes ago? And you say, oh. No, I'm going to ask you because I know you. No, seriously, any questions? Yes? Yes, that is correct. If you look at the SATAC guide, it talks about assumed knowledge, but even that is out of date. The criterion to get in, because this program straddles art and science, we can't just be very, very specific about one part or another. Effectively, if you're a good all-rounder, you will succeed in this program. Okay? Yes?
Is maths really important?
It used to be, but the way that architecture has gone in recent years, it recognises that there's just such a large body of knowledge, and buildings are getting very complex, that architects themselves cannot design individual components in terms of the structural aspects, so we rely on other parts of the industry, in other words, engineers. So what we do is we do enough maths, enough structures in the program so you understand what you don't know, the limit of your knowledge. But so it's important, but it's not the major issues. If you've done year 11 maths, you'll have no trouble getting through this. Yes?
I'm doing a carpentry course at the moment. Will that help me get into this?
You're doing a carpentry course. I would suggest you do the STAT test. I take it you're over 18. Do the STAT test, and that will assess your facility to actually undertake further study. And if you do well, then you're fine. You'll get in. In fact, coming from that background, you're very hands-on. You'll actually understand construction better than all the others in the actual class. So it can be an advantage. It shouldn't be seen as a bar, the fact that you've come from a trade background. Yes?
How about physics?
Physics, once again, we do some building science, but it is not the premier aspect of it. So you don't need it as a prerequisite, no. If you've done high school science up to probably year 11, year 10, year 11, you're fine.